We're going to be reviewing a very, very special book. The reason why it is such a special book is because it is the Fantomet Christmas album of 2022. And this album, when last year, so last year I was talking about this book and when it was going to come out and before Christmas. And then I think I was also talking about where you could get it. And the person who sent me this book, and still am very, very lucky for him to be sending this to me and for people sending stuff to me and like comics and stuff to my location. I think I'm very grateful that people are sending stuff. But anyways, so the person who sent me this comic book, this Fantomet album of 2022, this Christmas album of 2022, was in fact Ivan Peterson. So thank you, Ivan Peterson, for sending me this. And now we're going to be getting into the review of this book. Most of the colorings in this book was done by Ivan Peterson. And I think when you have a colorist who is of high quality and so legendary status as Ivan Peterson is, and some of the things he does say, sometimes controversial, but I think the way he colors his images, it's nothing to like anyone else. Like his images that he does and the colors he chooses in those panels and in the images he works on, I think they are some of the best colorings and some of the best colored work people have seen for the last 60, 50, 40 plus years. I think that he does an amazing job on the colorings. He puts heaps of effort and into his work, but he is a Phantom comic book fan. He also is a colorist, so he's a Phantom fan who has been a fan of the character for a very, very long time. And I just say that is just amazing. That's fantastic. And I think that's a great thing that a Phantom fan who is interested in coloring stories for Phantom fans is still a fan himself. So if that makes sense, I think he is just an amazing person, even though some of the things that he may say is people may think that they are controversial, but like I will say this, like everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Like I have heaps of opinions on my show, The Enthusiast, which the season 4 of The Enthusiast will be coming very soon. If you're not expressing your opinion with passion, then I don't know why. I don't know if you're not like, here's some of the things that people think that is controversial that he says, and people that may think that that's controversial, but then sometimes they might disagree with what he says. Like, I will say this, everyone and anyone is entitled to their own opinion, whether a person thinks it's good or whether a person thinks it's negative or dismisses it. Like, everyone is entitled to their opinion. That's probably one of the principles why I made this channel. Like, I love the Phantom, and even better, I love talking about the Phantom and things to do with the Phantom and what's happening in the Phantom comic book strip and what's happening in the Phantom itself. I like talking about things that I'm passionate about and does. Everyone has that small piece that they do or a thing they work on that they're passionate about. So the stories that we have in this Fantomet album of 2022 include The Golden Sands of Kilauea. So this book, this story ran from the 18th of December 1966 to the 2nd of April 1967, with the script being done by the legendary Lee Falk and the even more legendary artist Cy Barry. And then we have the second story. It is the Lonago Forest. That story, when I read that in the Christmas album last year or the year before, that story is just, it's just weird. It's just very, very, the art is striking, but it just goes to those levels where you're thinking, what the hell is happening in this comic strip? What is Tony Hall? So sorry about that language, but I think that's just the majority of what people think about this story. And then the last story we have is Imaginary Playmate, and that started from the 25th of October 1953 and went until the 31st of January 1954. The script as well was done by Lee Falk, and the legendary Wilson McCoy was the artist for the last story. And then they also have like a little description of each story on the pages. And then we get into the beautiful, beautiful colored pages by Ivan Peterson. As I said when I started this video, what do I think of the paper quality? What do I think of this book? Well, the paper quality, I would say, is quite good, but it's a higher quality paper that you not necessarily would see in like a few publication story. But I feel like it still has like a sort of Daily Telegraph, the good old Daily Telegraph or the Sunday Telegraph sort of feeling on the paper. I just feel like it has that sort of feeling, but it's like a bit more high. It's a bit more upscaled, I think. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Look at some of the panels and then look at some of the art within those panels and how Ivan Peterson has colored those panels. I love it. The only draw card away from this book is that this may have happened when it was coming from the Norwegian countries, but because you've got the binding, it's sort of like, I would say, it's not a square binding, but it's one of those other types of binding where it's binded sort of landscaped. And when you open the book, it feels like you're about to like rip half the book to shreds. It feels like all the pages are glued to one piece of paper. In a good way, it feels like you're watching a movie script going that way, going horizontal line. But in another way, it just feels like you're nearly ripping the book half to shreds. With this type of binding and the way they've gone about it, the colours are amazing. I think you're more wanting to buy this book because of the stories in it, because of the art in it, and because of the colours that have been put into the panels. But in saying that, if this book in your collection was to last 20 odd years, that would be amazing. But if this binding is like a type of binding where it breaks down over time, that's where I would think you would have a problem. Because I don't think that if you're buying this book for the stories, but not worrying about how the book may go against the face of the time span of the history, if you're not worrying about that, then I guess that's okay. But I think it also goes into the fact that if you're looking after the book, it might last longer, like a lot of things. If you're really looking after a book, it will last eons of times. It may last a century. You never know. You simply never know. But we have gotten into this story where I was talking about it and where I thought it was going a touch weird. I thought someone is on something. Someone has been maybe going a little bit too far on this story, a little bit too creative, a little bit too imagination. But I guess if you haven't got enough if you haven't got enough imagination to create a story, then what are you going to write about? I guess it comes back down to that. There's always with a lot of creative projects and a lot of creative things that people do, I think you have a balance of whether it's really, really good, and then you have a balance of that you've gone absolutely all in and you've said, oh yes, I'm going to make this the most imaginative story I can, and I'm going to change it up, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And I think that you just need to have like balance. You can't either. It's like a turntable. If the vinyl goes too fast, the song's going to go too fast. But if it goes too slow, it's going to go like this. You've got to have the right type of balance, I think, with a lot of stories and with the creative direction the stories are going. I just think that. And sometimes I think that when I'm editing a video for the channel, like sometimes you will have like a piece of music that you might want to put in, but does that piece of music take away from the content or does it add to it? Like you have that saying where you are saying, is the thing that you're trying to add adding value, or is it taking away from the thing that you're working on? And I think you see a lot of that in a lot of stories and a lot of imaginative projects. And then the Phantom then meets up with Gureen after having a very, very weird experience. In the current saga that I've been talking about since eons, I think that with this latest saga that's happening and the direction it's taking, I would think that when we were starting that long process of going through the Old Man Moz's prophecy, we weren't going to expect to have that panel in another story. And I think that if we did expected that and people were thinking about like, oh, this story, this panel right here is going to show up in a future story, we were to a fact going to say that, oh, I already knew that panel was going to turn up in a future story, then we would technically half know what was going to happen. Pretty much sort of implies that the Phantom's going to maybe pass away. Maybe. Yeah, I think that if we didn't think about that, if we didn't think hard enough about those stories, then we would just go along for the ride. Now we have Lee Falk and Wilson McCoy. I think I like a lot of the older type stories before the 1960s because they were more family orientated. I know that if you were reading in the Cy Barry years, they were still family orientated, but there's some of the stories that Lee Falk and Wilson McCoy and some of the stories Ray Moore did, there was just a magic about it. But it was also very, very family orientated and sometimes inspiring. Sometimes you could get inspired by some of the panels and some of the stories that this team, this awesome A-team was creating. Lee Falk, Wilson McCoy, and Lee Falk and Cy Barry. I think if we didn't have Wilson McCoy or Cy Barry or Ray Moore, I don't think the Phantom comic strip would be the same. I think that if we didn't have Cy Barry, especially Cy Barry, the Phantom comic strip would definitely not be the same as it is 87 years on from it being created on the 17th of February 1936. And as fashion would go, that's the last story has ended, and we will read a panel. So this guy says, the text box says, right, horror, Leiden av hovslag I don't forgörni og han heki. Some of those panels are saying in this book. Please comment down below and your impression and your reaction to me trying to read a panel. H4 han H4 herhan ei papa homan va hor netohop do kom klekrat for sant. I can't read these. I don't understand what the language is talking about. And then we have the good old Christmas advertisements. Oh, Donald Duck. Well, there you go. Disney's la fondant. Good stuff. And then, at the back of the book, at the final vacated of this book, we have Husk Banton penned